Good afternoon. I've just completed talking 4 times to the Federation of Small Businesses in exactly the same speech, talking about how sound processing can impact on stress and vice versa. And what I want to do is just go back through the notes and record them largely for my colleagues and other people who are interested so we can share it more widely. So I'm a sound therapist and I trained in Paris with Tomatis. And I see sound processing probably very much more differently than most people. So let's go through the basics. Sound processing is a lot more than just hearing. It's the ability to hear speech against background noises, to deal with background noises and just not close off your sound. It's the ability to follow speech as the speaker moves. A lot of people can't. It's the ability to process all sounds across the full sound spectrum and make sense of them and not have any gaps. It's the ability to detect changes in pitch, which means the sense of the speech has a lot more nuance. You can make far more sense of it. Sound is a living 3D binaural system. You're working with your left and your right ears, you're working with air conduction of sound, you're working with your whole body processing sound. Sound is coming at you from all angles, and you have to process and deal with it and decide what's worth listening to. So it's quite a lot going on, and your own sound processing system is not symmetrical, it's asymmetrical. So each side has to be functioning really well in tune with the other side for it to work well. So let's go on. And as I said, sound is a whole body experience. You know, actually, when you start looking around who processes sound well, you look for your upright person. That's telling you their whole body is processing sound well. When you listen to the speech, you're going to be hearing coherent speech. It's going to flow on, it'll make sense over time. Good old Boris. All that turned in his early years in ear infection and so on. It's affected his posture, it's affected his sound processing and his speech. And so when he speaks, you can hear in his speech, that juddering. There are problems with the sound processing, and that is impacting on speech, it's impacting on cognition. So you need sound therapy. Sound is a whole body experience. So inside your inner ear, you've got little muscles, very tiny, the two tiniest muscles in your body on either side, and they actually need some exercise. And if you've had infection, they can become very lazy. And if that isn't addressed, it can affect you for life. Also in your inner ear is your vestibular system, and that impacts on your motor skills, your balance, and so on. So people with vertigo are going to be highly likely to have problems with sound, Meniere's and so on. It's to do with your inner ear. There is a link between your optic nerve and your inner ear, so sound and vision work together. They work with each other, it's a two-way process. There's links to your facial nerves, which is important because when you hear someone speak, you're blending their sound and their expressions. And that's important to make sense and to empathize. Also, this full range of what sound is doing. We're amazing animals, humans. We can make music, we can speak, we can differentiate pitch, and so on. We do incredible things with sound. Unlike any other animal, we are masters of sound. For this talk, I thought it was really useful to look at sort of typical problems with sound processing. So what can happen is you can get ear infection, which impacts on your sound processing, and that in turn causes you to be stressed because sound affects your whole body. So this is typical client. We're looking at both ears, left and right. We're looking at hertz along the x-axis, decibels down the y-axis. The blue curve is sound processing through air. The green curve is where I want the blue curve to be. So we can see straight away on the right ear, there's a big problem. The red curve is bone conduction of sound. And the way this machine is calibrated, it should run 10 decibels below the air conduction without any clashing. Well, obviously there are problems. There's clashes, there's big gaps. The two systems are not working coherently together. This is the result of some form of quite severe throat or ear infection in this person's late teens, early 20s. It has chopped out a bit of their sound. It is perfectly possible, and we did agitate the sound processing to get the sound up. The impact of having this kind of big gap is it can affect somebody emotionally. It can affect somebody that they are very poor time managers. They might change jobs every other week. They're very inconsistent in their behavior. And then once it's gone, they're really grounded. And for this person, there was absolutely nothing else wrong with them. It is just this big hole in the sound. And once sorted, fine. And it's quite marvellous. This is the kind of sound process I expect Boris Johnson to have, having had those extended years of inner ear infection, been a very late speaker, and you can hear when he's speaking, that juddering. That processing sound is very difficult, and what my reading is telling you is where you've got all those crosses, tremendous difficulty telling where sound is coming from in terms of left and right. On air conduction, with the red curve, you've got the red dashes, they're telling you exactly the same scrambling is going on bone conduction. You've got tremendous clashing of air and bone conduction. It's like trying to listen in a washing machine. The sound is coming, but it's getting incredibly scrambled. So you can see at Prime Minister's question time that processing what's said is very hard, and often he falls back on stock phrases. It's the only way to survive, but he's become extremely skilled in covering up. And the speech often is quite juddering. So that again can be sorted. It's much more difficult to sort out when you're dealing with a very large adult, but it is possible. And it's by and large, small, skinny people are much more plastic, but it can move and it needs to move. It's a terrible mess. So as well as having effection, the other thing to be aware of is that the sound system is your first defense mechanism. If you're under attack, you close it down. You can just imagine you're under attack and you'll feel it closing down. That means if you're in a profession where you're constantly being talked at, or you are working with somebody who can't stop nagging you, you are going to close down your sound processing. So I'm talking about people like interpreters, translators, people who work all day in call centres doing customer service. They're going to close down their sound processing. It's virtually a professional hazard because you're being talked at all the time. Your ears have had enough. So we need to do some sound therapy to get that sound up, because suppressing the sound processing impacts on global processing. You haven't noticed it's closed down over time. You need to bring it back up again. If you have had a bad trauma in life, particularly in business, if you've had a bankruptcy, you've bust up with a partner big time, there can be some very nasty meltdowns between partners. It can cause long-term damage. Really frightening. I'm sure some people have been through Brexit. They thought they were going to get a fishing industry and they haven't. And as I keep saying, your sound impacts on your global processing. So we can see when we screen someone's vision and they're reading numbers which have no meaning, their eyes work perfectly well together. But if they've got a sound processing problem, when they come to combine sound and vision, the dysregulation on the sound system can cause dysregulation on the eye movements. So when they're reading, they keep reading, and they can't remember anything they've read. And it is that their eyes are unconsciously dysregulating because their sound processing isn't working. You need to get both systems working properly for them to be able to read smoothly and function well. So there you are, you're a small business, you've survived 18 months of COVID and Brexit, and you are tired. You probably haven't any money to pay for my services, so there we go. I sent out masses of notes to people on the Federation of Small Business, just how to get the body to a good place working with sound processing. If you send me an email my details at the end, you too can have the same exciting notes. I suggested to people they thought about 2 bits of wearable tech. Well worth investing in. This is a thing called a forebrain. It goes on your bones, you can buy it, you can talk into it, you create an audio vocal loop. That, if you practice every day, say 15, 20 minutes a day, in the car, singing happy songs, if you drive to work, you will over time move your sound processing. And I talked about how I've had very good results with like taxi drivers who are learning English as a second language. I've had good results when I'm working with cohorts of school children, and we've got to cheaply move them quickly to better sound processing so they can read better. And forebrain looks like nothing, but it is quite powerful. I wore it for 4 hours driving to Oxford and back singing, and the next day, gee, my vision, my night vision particularly, was on fire, and I'm much more alert. That was years ago when it first came on the market, and I've never had a problem since then where I kept nodding off when driving. I'm now much, much more alert all the time, and it is my sensory system just tripped into place. I would not recommend 4-hour journeys, but it shows you the power of it. The other bit of kit that came onto the market during lockdown is the Infinite Tomatis headset, which is, again, nice bit of kit you can buy yourself. It's useful and it comes with preset music, so you can wear it. And you don't have to talk into it. It does half an hour sound therapy anyway, but it does give you the option of an audio vocal loop, so you can combine it and you can do therapy over days, weeks, months, and slowly move your sound processing. And you can get on your own. If you've got some of that very big damage we're seeing on the screenshots I showed you, because obviously they're quite extreme, then you're going to need my help. You're going to need more intensive therapy. In which case, you can book me and I can come out and I can have a really good look. And I will look at what's happening in motor skills. I will look at what's happening to sound. I'll look at what's happening to your eye movements and how you work with everything to solve problems. Then we'll know where we've got problems that are triggering off the issues and suggest appropriate solutions that will bring you to what's called motor sensory integration. So quite exciting. It takes me 2 or 3 hours to assess somebody, 3 if we chat a lot. I'm quite chilled. These are my contact details. If you want to train up, you want to get involved, I'm more than happy to chat to you on Zoom. If you just want to explore and think about, my goodness, I never knew this existed, then, again, I'm quite happy to chat about it. And Tomatis are always very easy in terms of having somebody there you can talk to. So thank you very much for listening to me. Thank you for the Federation of Small Businesses for hosting the chat this morning, and I hope people have found that useful, and if not, ask questions. Thank you. Goodbye.